My name is Debbie Simmonds, and I am the wife of Kim Simmonds, who wrote the book Street Corner Talking and was the founder and forever member of Savoy Brown.
I'm Robert Schaffner. I'm an author. I hope to facilitate the publication of the Kim Simmonds autobiography. I'm also the author of Fleetwood Mac in Chicago with Jeff Lowenthal.
You're listening to Talking Blues Podcast.
My first question is, how did this book happen? I know that Kim started writing it a number of years ago. What made him start to write this book?
He really thought that he had an interesting story, I think. He lived, the life that a lot of people dream of. But, he got there in a very interesting way. His childhood was not terribly conventional, and, it was his whole life was rather difficult, and he just thought it would be an interesting story to tell. And he also had so many stories from the road that he would talk about with, fans and friends and musicians. And I just think that he thought that he had a really interesting story to tell.
Did he discuss this with you at the very beginning? Did he say, I'm thinking of writing a book, or?
Yes.
And obviously
Yes.
you encouraged them to do so.
Oh, yes. Definitely.
Street Corner Talking, the name of the book. Was that an obvious choice, or how did that come about?
I think so. I think it actually came from his dear friend John Shelmett, who also was very instrumental in helping the book be put together, as far as, Kim would write chapters and send them to John. And I think it was actually, Kim was like, coming up with a few ideas and bouncing things off John. And I think John said, what about Street Corner Talking? It's perfect. And Kim was like, oh, I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's perfect.
So were you involved from when you would write a chapter, would he show it to you, or were you involved throughout the process, or were you involved at the end of the process?
I was not involved in the very beginning. He would send chapters periodically to me, but I was not always involved. He was not always looking for my input, and I didn't really give him input because I wanted it to be his story, and I think John felt the same way. He wanted it to be Kim's memories, Kim's recollections, his words 100%. And that's what the book ended up being.
So, Robert, you came on board once the book was done. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell me about what your role was and what happened at that point?
I was contacted by Tony Bullard, and he had contacted originally Debbie because he had saw the Fleetwood Mac in Chicago book, and there's a Kim Simmonds interview in there, and he asked Debbie if Jeff Lowenthal and Robert Schaffner were still alive, and Debbie said that she knew me and we were friends, and it never dawned on her to contact me about publishing the book. So that was Tony's idea, and that's how it came about with Schiffer Publishing, which distributes books on every continent on the world, and the book is released in the United States. It will be released overseas in April.
And the street date for the U.S. is February. Is that correct?
It's it was January 28th.
Oh, okay. So it's out there now.
Yep.
Yes.
So, Robert, you weren't involved in the book at all. I presume at one point you read it.
Yes, I did. I also met Kim Simmonds and stayed with Kim Simmonds back in, I hate to admit, but 1973 in England.
Wow.
I met him through a friend of mine, Paul Hamer from Hamer Guitars. And I was overseas backpacking with a friend because I didn't go to college right away. And Paul asked Kim, he said he had two friends coming through England and could they contact you? And he graciously accepted, and he picked us up in his Jensen car and took us to his apartment, which I still can describe to this day. And he actually had me look at his stereo because Paul, I was in the consumer electronics business for 40 years, and I used to do sound for bands, and he asked me to look at his stereo because he had no bass, and I turned his speakers around and there were no backs on the speakers. So I've met through Paul Hamer and through my sound days early, is back when Cheap Tricks first started. I must say Kim Simmonds was one of the nicest guys I've ever met in the music business. Probably too nice for the music business.
Well, 73 would have been like he would have been an established musician by then.
We talked a lot about Fleetwood Mac because he toured with them several times.
Okay, I know this is going off a bit, but the fact that you wrote the Fleetwood Mac book, I presume you were a fan of Fleetwood Mac.
Big fan of Peter Green and Danny Curry. Yes.
So, can you put into perspective, for those who don't know, the role Savoy Brown played in the British blues scene?
Well, Savoy Brown was one of the first. I mean, he started out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, in 1964, 65. And for my money, and for the British invasion, Clapton, Page, Beck, Green, Kim Simmonds never got the credit that he deserved. He was there at the very beginning of the British blues, right there with John Mayall, and obviously spanned a lot of different bands from the people that he had in his band, including obviously the biggest one, Foghat. So he is in the category with Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Peter Green, Mick Taylor, Eric Clapton. All those early British 1960s British artists who actually popularized, and according to Buddy Guy, who I've talked to, if it wasn't for those guys, the blues would have died. Which is very interesting because they're all British.
Can you explain why the British bands were so into the blues? How did that happen?
They just, I think, maybe Debbie, you can answer that too. I think for my money, they just loved the United States blues scene. They got it, and they all listened to those records, from the 50s and early 60s, Willie Dixon, and all the, Elmore James and all those guys, and they just idolized those guys, and they made it their own.
Debbie, do you have any thoughts on that?
From Kim's perspective, I can tell you that it was his brother's influence. His brother was 9 years older than he was. And Harry would come home with records, and Kim would lock himself in his room and listen to the records, or listen to the records with Harry, and they would dissect every note, every key change and every nuance of every song, and it just became what he was. And I think it was probably the same for a lot of other British boys at the time. They were craving that different type of music, maybe. And the field in England and in the UK was wide open. So what a great place for them to land.
So the point that you made, Robert, about Kim not getting the recognition. I mean, here's a band that actually had some hits and sold a lot of albums. Why do you think he didn't get the recognition?
That's the $100 million question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, hopefully this book brings to light all the great music. I mean, it's 50 plus years of music that he provided us with. in all sorts of different incarnations, but it was still the blues at its root. So I can't answer that question. I mean, it's just like, why do I like Peter Green over Eric Clapton? It's personal taste. It's what moves you inside. And that's one thing that I can say about Kim Simmonds and Peter Green, that they did play from here, not here.
Mm-hmm. Debbie, it's not in the book. I mean, he doesn't mention that fact of not getting the recognition. Did he ever discuss it with you?
He didn't discuss it at length, that's for sure. He really disliked hearing that. He really didn't like it when people would say, you didn't get the recognition that you deserved, because it wasn't, I hate to say it wasn't important to him, but it was a sore spot for him.
Just knowing the type of person he was, I don't even know if he thought that way. You know what I mean? You read the book, and what comes across is, here's somebody who had this dream of becoming a musician, and he achieved it. And it wasn't easy, and he certainly reveals in the book the ups and downs of being a musician. But
Right.
he persevered, and the opportunities, and I think he was very grateful for all the ups and downs, and even the downs he seemed to accept quite a bit. Like there was no bitterness in the book, which kind of surprised me, because maybe that speaks to my pettiness, but he certainly didn't come off that way. Like he was very appreciative. And what I found interesting was the early 1980s was really difficult for him. He went through a divorce, he went through bankruptcy, and he left the UK because the music scene had changed. But even then, I just didn't get the sense that he was really bitter.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. He wasn't, that wasn't in his makeup. He was very much the type that would just move on. You don't wallow, you don't overthink it, you don't, get yourself into any kind of, bad place with all the bad things that happen. You just keep moving. You just keep moving. And I think that's just the way he lived his life. As I mentioned earlier, his childhood was difficult, and he never spoke about it really. And he actually said that he blocked some of it out. He really didn't have memories of parts of his childhood. And I think that was just the way that he lived his life. He was truly a very magnanimous and grateful individual. He was inevitably, I always say this, but it's true, inevitably, the one thing that almost everyone will say to me is what a great guy he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was grateful, he was humble. He knew that he was a great guitar player, but he would never tell you he was a great guitar player. He thought his playing should speak for itself, and I think it did.
That, and maybe that answers your question too about why he didn't play the game, so to speak. And I can allude to something that Stan Webb from Chicken Shack said to me about Peter Green. Peter Green and Eric Clapton were talking. This is 68, 69, so he was in Cream.
Mm-hmm.
Stan Webb, and I'll paraphrase, he said Eric Clapton was wearing some sort of tapestry. Peter Green was wearing a t-shirt and blue jeans. And Eric said to Peter, "You can't be a rock star dressed like that." And Peter just smiled and walked away. And I think that's the mindset Kim had. Let my guitar and my music speak for itself. I'm not going to dress up, and I'm not going to wear makeup or do what so many other people have and still do.
Right.
Robert, can you talk to going back to the 80s? I guess in the beginning of the 80s was a rough period for him. But tell me about the music scene that led Kim to move out of the UK.
I think Debbie can answer that.
I think it was he speaks in the book about his relationship with his brother. His brother was his manager, and it turned out that that did not work out the way Kim hoped that it would, and that everything kind of fell apart in the UK. And I think he just wanted to have a new life and
Start anew, right?
start anew, correct, and put the put everything behind him and start over again. And by moving to the US, maybe that would happen. So I think again it was facing adversity and trying to move on. Such a recurring theme with him.
And the fact that he was able to do it over and over again.
Yes, yes. Who could do that? I don't, I'm not, really, I'm not sure I could do that.
I know I
No,
couldn't.
I couldn't either.
Yeah.
And what's that quality? Like, is it just determination? Is it just the love of music was so great that it didn't matter? Like, it's pretty impressive.
I think it's the latter, because I think that's true with Kim, and I think that's true with Peter Green, with Danny Kerwin. It was the love of music. It was what they were born into doing. It's just like, why does the artist paint in the way he paints? It's just the way that person is.
Yes.
And I talked to Kim at length for the Fleetwood Mac book. A matter of fact, he at one point said, "You're not putting all this in the book, are you?" um, um, and he I mean, to take two strangers in, back in '73, I mean, at that point, as your pointed out, he was doing pretty well then. I mean, Savoy Brown was rocking. And, to take two, 18-year-olds in, for the afternoon or the evening or whatever, and entertain them when you're, on the charts and playing music is something special. I don't think a lot of people would do that.
Tell me what it did for you. What that experience was like for you.
It was. I thought it was funny because they had to fix his stereo. But I've learned through the years that a lot of musicians have really bad stereo equipment.
That doesn't seem right.
No, it doesn't. But then again, that's why a lot of musicians, and I think Debbie would agree to this, you have to be a very special kind of musician to self-produce, because you're too close to the music. It's just like editing a book. You wrote it, you might need somebody to edit it because you're too close to the words. Now, what Debbie said earlier, too, I think is very important to point out, because Kim is a musician, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's also an artist. He's a painter. He's also an author, because Schiffer, myself, our editor, did not touch one comma, one word that Kim wrote. Therefore, he is a writer, too.
Wow.
Yes.
I can't say that about a lot of other people that I've seen writings about that are musicians.
You mentioned the paintings, the artwork that he did. It's not. It's mentioned a little bit in the book, but it's not really featured prominently. And I don't know if any of the artwork actually shows up in the final version of the book. But tell me about that.
There's two copies of two of Kim's paintings in the book, but there's a lot more on SavoyBrown.com.
Okay, so I think the version that I read didn't have that.
That might not have.
Right.
Can you
Right.
talk, Kim, Deb? Can you talk about Kim's love of painting and his artwork and how that began?
Oh, yes. He loved painting. He loved artwork. He loved museums. And I think he said to me at one point, I think I'd like to try to paint. And I said, yes, why not? And it turned out he was great. He really had a talent for it. I mean, he was just an artist through and through, whether that meant poetry or writing or painting or music. I mean, that's who he was. And I think going back to, trying to figure out why he was able to come back all those times. I think it was because he was an artist. It's who he was. He was a musician first and foremost, of course, but he was also all of these other people, all of these other talents that people don't necessarily have, that he was so well versed in. Again, he learned music on his own. He learned how to paint on his own. He wrote poetry on his own. He wrote the book on his own. I mean, all of these things. He was such a creative mind. He couldn't sit still. He always had to be doing something. He played the guitar every day. And
Matter
when
of
I
fact,
say,
there's what, two, three of the songs that he wrote that are on the new Foghat album.
yes, yes, he wrote 4 songs for Foghat, and they actually recorded 3 of them. And they were so flabbergasted at how good the songs were. And, they were like, they were written for us. And I said, yes, those are yours. Those are yours. He wrote those for you. So he was a remarkable human being.
Tell me about how you met Kim. This would have been in the 80s. The book talks about it a little bit, but not in much detail. But tell me about how you remember that.
Well, it was actually the end of 1990.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's okay. And we met at a show, and he was playing up in this area where we lived. But of course, he didn't live here at the time, but he knew some local musicians, and they had put a band together because Savoy Brown was not on the road at the time. And so he would do these little dates with these local musicians. I think they called it the Kim Simmonds Blues Express. And I happened to be at one of those shows. And we just started talking and hit it off, and that was the beginning.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
So I know that Kim wasn't really interested in the business side of things. When he recorded the albums, he would never listen to them again. He wanted to be arm's length away from the business of music. I know at one point you took over managing or becoming Kim's personal manager. Tell me about how that came about and what qualified you to do that.
What qualified me to do that is that I was his partner.
Mm-hmm.
To be perfectly honest, I was not raised in the music business. I knew nothing about the music business. But I think when you live with someone and you just become immersed, if you're lucky, I think you become immersed in the business. And that's how it all happened. And I want to say, because I think that it's a little muddy, Kim Simmonds was his own manager. There was never any doubt about that. The band and I always called him the boss, because no matter what anybody else thought, including me, or suggestions we may have, he was the boss. He made the decisions. So we could guide and suggest, but he always had the final say on everything, always. So he really drove his career. He really did.
He certainly downplays it in the book.
Yes, that's true.
And then the other thing that's quite apparent is the fact that when you with a band for 50 years, I mean, it's crazy how many people went through that band. Robert, can you
Yes.
talk? I mean, we know about Foghat, but like there are other notable musicians who went on to do other great recordings. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I can think of one guy, you were talking of the blues, and like your podcast says, is Chris Yolden, who just recently passed away, who, for my money, had such a great blues voice. And let's see, who else am I thinking? I mean, Foghat is the one. Who else am I thinking of?
Well,
Deb?
Stan Webb.
I was just gonna say Stan Webb
Yeah.
from
There
Chicken
were
Shack too.
I mean, it's so hard to keep track of everybody.
Well, there's actually a Wikipedia page that lists all the members, and then that links to what else they did, and it's an impressive list.
He,
That's when I met Kim in '73. You asked. I mean, that was my connection, is because he toured with Fleetwood Mac and Peter Green and Danny Kerwin, and we talked about that type of music and on tour. And you think about it, you were talking about moving from England to America, but when you're in a touring band, and I think Debbie would hardly agree with this, you really don't have a home.
Mm-hmm.
that can be true, sure.
Yeah, because I mean, you're living out of a suitcase, and that creates all sorts of tolls on you. And I think a lot of, you were asking about management and stuff like that. I think a lot of bands. I mean, we can go back to the Beatles, to Buddy Holly, to um, you know a lot of musicians, because they're doing, hopefully they're doing it from here and not for here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of musicians and a lot of creative minds are not very good at business, and they need somebody to help them, whether it be a partner such as Debbie or somebody outside. But more times than not, unfortunately, unless it's a partner like Debbie, they get ripped off.
When I read a book of somebody I'm interested in and spend a few days, in this case, I was sitting by the pool and spending a few days of reading Kim's book,
That's nice.
you get attached to the person every hour you spend with them and getting to know their life. Because even though I had met Kim a couple of times, I didn't know him very well. I just knew that he was a really great guy and he was very open. And he was honest. I remember once he was doing his acoustic tour, and he kind of said how it was something very new to him, and he wasn't really comfortable with it at that point, which surprised me that he would reveal that to me.
Yes.
But in reality, it didn't surprise me because I think that's who he was. He was very honest about who he was and how he was feeling. I finished the book and I feel like I get to know him a little bit. I kind of miss him because the book is over. Deb, what was it like for you to go through this book?
It was difficult. It really was difficult. I had to go through and fact check, sort of. I wanted to be sure that the names were spelled correctly and the punctuation was correct and there weren't any run-on sentences. That's all, that was my involvement in it. I didn't change anything, but in doing that, you have to read it and reread it and reread it because inevitably you'll miss something. It was difficult. It was difficult. Losing Kim was probably the biggest blow in my life. Well, not probably, it was. It was definitely the biggest blow in my life. And to be honest, I think I'm still navigating without him. I still miss him so much. He was such a big presence, and having to read the book over and over, it was difficult. You don't ever become desensitized, I don't think, when you're so close to it, which is hard.
What did you learn from the book?
I think I learned that he he wrote the way he lived. There really weren't any surprises, I don't think. I think I knew everything that he had put in the book, but I think he actually wrote from his heart and he didn't reveal any of the bad stories, that all musicians have, about all the bad experiences that you can have, or the people that you meet, or business deals that go wrong. He didn't go into any of that. It was all very from his heart, and almost things that he would want people to know. Maybe that's it. Maybe it was just that he didn't write about anything that he didn't want people to know, or that might color the way they look at other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he didn't, and I'm sure you've read a lot of music books, as I have, and Kim may drop a name here or two, but he doesn't elaborate. To Debbie's point, he doesn't go on like, oh, I met Jimmy Page and he said this and did this and we talked. He's just, I met Jimmy Page backstage and we had a nice chat.
Right.
That's it. He doesn't.
Yeah.
And a lot of books, and a lot of the books I personally don't like to read, are just that. They go on and on. It's like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear chronologically what you've done, this and that, and what it meant to you. And I think Kim's book is that.
Robert, what did you learn from reading the book?
I think I learned what you just said, that it reaffirmed my already notion that Kim was a very open and very even-keeled person, and didn't, at least at surface that I never saw, like Debbie said, he just moved on. It's just like, okay, I learned from this and I moved on. And it just reaffirmed that my feeling that he was too nice for the music business. It's the old saying that they made the film business to make the music business look better.
And because your wife's in the film business.
Yes, I do.
Debbie, is there any other Savoy Brown related projects upcoming?
There could be. There's nothing at the moment. We're
I can
always
think of one.
trying to think. Sorry?
In April.
Oh, there is a book signing in Chicago.
Nice.
With the Savoy Brown rhythm section and Sean Chambers.
Yes, yes. So the guys that played with Kim, the last band, will be there with Sean Chambers. So Pat DeSalvo and Garnet Grimm will be there, and I will be there. My daughter will be there.
And they were with Kim for what?
12 years.
Okay, sorry, I exaggerated.
Yeah. Felt like 15. No, I'm joking.
It's a good one.
I wish it had been 25.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So that's
we're having
very
that in April at Reggie's in Chicago.
Nice.
April 18th.
And there'll be a book signing. Hopefully people will bring their books, but there'll be a limited supply of books there to be signed if you didn't choose to buy one prior to it. But it's available, and it's available in the United States, North America, pretty much anywhere you buy books. And it will be released elsewhere at the end of April.
Robert, do you have anything coming up that you can talk about?
No. I do have things coming up.
You just can't talk about it.
Right.
Can't talk about it yet. But perhaps next month, if you will allow me the pleasure.
I want to thank both of you. It's a pleasure meeting you both, and I love this book. And, as I said, I really like Kim. I really appreciate the time he spent with me and the interviews he gave me. And this book was certainly similar to that man that I got to talk to, and it's very thoughtful and very revealing. So thank you for sharing this with me, and thank you for giving me some insight into this book.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. Thank you. I would really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.